Hateful Eight is the 8th film from director Quentin Tarantino, who is the architect of some of my favorite films of all time, like Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill 1 and 2, Django Unchained, and Inglourious Basterds. He is one of the most consistent directors of our time. And Quentin Tarantino is one of those directors where he has a very distinct style. You know when you're watching a Quentin Tarantino movie. He has very crisp, wonderful dialogue, and mixed with very brutal violence. There are other things that define his style too, like choice of popular songs, and the lack of linear storytelling. So naturally, as a big fan of Tarantino's, I was very excited for The Hateful Eight. And after seeing it, I really think that Tarantino hits it again. He is once again proving that he is so consistent with his filmmaking. He never ever puts out a worthless movie. He really labors over his films to make them as good as he possibly can, and that's why to me he's 8 of 8. Perfect record right now. The Hateful Eight does have some flaws though, and I do think this is overall one of QT's weaker films. But that being said, I think that's more in the context of how great Tarantino's filmography is. He has so many game-changing movies that even though this is just a great movie, it's one of his weaker ones. Right off the bat, Quentin Tarantino always gets great performances out of his actors, and really not everyone can do this dialogue, so a lot of his returning players show up here again. Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, Samuel L. Jackson. Not surprisingly, these people bring it again. They are so good at this dialogue, especially Samuel L. Jackson. Obviously, his role as Jules in Pulp Fiction is iconic at this point, but he, once again, kills it in this movie, and some of the things he says were just perfect. Not to take away from Madsen and Roth, who were both great as well. Roth at first took me out of the movie with this very weird British accent, but it ends up playing into his character, which I won't go into as it's a bit of a spoiler, but it ended up really working and that didn't bother me. There are newcomers, though, to Tarantino, like Bruce Dern, who gives a pretty good performance in this movie. Also, Kurt Russell, who was one of my favorites in this film. While he has a lot of repetitive dialogue, he keeps it fresh every single time. And that's really a tribute to his acting in this movie. And also, Jennifer Jason Leigh, fantastic in this film. I know there's a bit of a controversy over her character, but honestly, it didn't bother me at all. She is still tough as nails, and really she's just as dirty as some of these people. But like all of his movies, Tarantino is the obvious star of this film. His dialogue, like I said, in this movie is perfect. It's always perfect. And honestly, this is probably his most dialogue heavy movie since Jackie Brown. Not to say that his other movies are not dialogue heavy, because they always are, but this one in particular, the guns really don't come ablazing till very late in this film. But when they do, my god. This might be some of the most brutal violence I've seen in a Tarantino film. Django Unchained may have had more, but that was very cartoony to me, which I enjoyed a lot. This, while having some of that, is way more brutal. But as someone who finds gore entertaining, I thought these moments were really badass and hilarious. A couple that really stand out. The violence in this film has some very cool moments in it, especially one moment with Samuel L. Jackson that was disgusting, but absolutely incredible. I think that the marketing of this movie, though, has been very weird. They really portray the movie to be this full-on action fest, and honestly, this is like if Quentin Tarantino was making an adaptation of an Agatha Christie novel, but with a lot of guts and blood. My only real flaw with this movie, and I guess this kind of like all goes into one, is the pacing of this film. This film is way too long. It's just way too long. It's not really a necessary 2 hours and 47 minutes. There's a little bit of a lull in a part of the movie when they first get to the cabin, but that didn't really bother me because the dialogue was so good, but you really was noticeable how much wasn't really happening, even with dialogue. And then there's a part of the movie in the last act that was a little unnecessary, very enjoyable because it was so sharply written. Again, the writing really covers all the flaws here, but man, it was just so unnecessary. However, I don't really mind these unnecessary scenes because Quentin Tarantino movies are an event. You don't get that many of them. He's going to retire after 10 films, so we're not even going to get that many films overall. So you really have to enjoy them when they come out. And for that, I'm going to give this an A-. That's all from me. I want to know what you all think about the Hateful Eight. Comment below. Also, you can hit the subscribe button down there. There will be plenty of reviews coming in 2016. It looks to be a packed year. You can catch all of that when you hit the button down there. And thank you all for watching this video. Happy New Year, everybody.